especially to talk about this talk. Even Bloomberg couldn't stop, even though they tried legally to shut it down. But one thing I think is really important for all of us to do is always get exposure to more frameworks and how teams are doing things. And so I met David at, what's it, Node.js Conf?
Empire Node.
And Bloomberg is launching a lot of their internal properties. Maybe you can talk about how you guys launch long-term props on this, and also I want to hear about your 404 pages. How those
Don't worry, I've covered both.
Okay, cover both of them. Okay, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then yeah, and welcome to David Lucia.
Hello everybody, my name is David Lucia. I am a software engineer at Bloomberg. Today I'm here to talk to you about Bloomberg Brisket, which is a homegrown technology that we're using in all of our new web products. So who here has heard of Bloomberg? All right, everyone, that's great. So for those of you who don't know, Bloomberg's main product is the Bloomberg Terminal. And what that is it's a software tool that people subscribe to, pay a lot of money for, and it delivers real-time financial data, news, gives you tools for analytics and different stuff in the financial industry. But not many people know about how big of a technology company Bloomberg is. We have a lot of engineers. I believe there's over 3,000 here in New York. We're in London, we're in DC, and we're soon to be in San Francisco. We also have one of the largest server-side JavaScript deployments anywhere. We've been doing it since 2005, so 4 or 5 years before Node.js was even created, we were doing server-side JavaScript. But that's for the terminal, and that's not what I'm here to talk to you about today. So who am I was my background. I graduated in 2012, so about 3 years ago. Joined Bloomberg right outside of college and was working for Bloomberg Tradebook, building C++ tools and JavaScript GUIs for the Bloomberg terminal. That was really cool, but my friend who had worked in another group, the web group, was telling me about all the cool stuff they're building with Node.js and how they were going to be rewriting Bloomberg.com and building a bunch of new properties. And he basically convinced me to join, so last July I left Tradebook after 2 years and joined the web team. So only a month after I joined, we started working on Bloomberg Politics, and I just realized I'm not updating the slides. So,
Do you want to click over anything, or?
That's fine. So this is the homepage of Bloomberg Politics. We started work on it last August, and in August I was working on a small team. There was like 6 at one point, it went up to 8, and we built this site in 2 months. So we started in August, we finished towards the end of September, and we launched it on October 6th, which is a pretty fast turnaround time. And things went pretty well. Really need to remember to do this. The launch came with a lot of media praise. There was a lot of people, different media publications who were talking about us, and the innovative design that was on the site. And also our error pages gained a lot of attention, specifically this page and our 404 page, which I forgot to put up the slideshow. Well, I'm not on Wi-Fi, so I forgot about that. But
Do you want me to add you to the Wi-Fi?
we could do it after.
How did you guys get approval to do those? I mean,
So that was very
did they know about it?
So a lot of people online like saw our error pages and they're like some intern must have done this. Like, how could this get through? That was completely untrue. It was a marketing decision to make these interesting error pages, and they've been very successful. And I think people have gotten a lot of enjoyment out of them. So after we built Bloomberg Politics, we had a month. That was last October, and we had a month to kind of like gather our thoughts, and in November we started building Bloomberg Business. And Bloomberg Business was slated to be the successor to Bloomberg.com as well as BusinessWeek.com. Bloomberg.com featured an even bolder design than Bloomberg Politics. Bloomberg.com, and with combination of Business Week, they get several million viewers, unique viewers a week. So there's a lot of traffic to the site. And we built that November, December, January, 3 months. We presented it to the world on January 27th, which was 2 weeks ago. So we're kind of just coming up for air. And we also had some crazy error pages, and our launch has been a success so far. The site has been stable. We've had a lot of media publications talk about us, like VentureBeat, Neiman Labs, a lot of big names. And we also scored more internet fame with our error pages. Really like it. So all these new websites were all built with a technology, and that's called Bloomberg Brisket. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So why did we build Brisket? We built it because we wanted to build really fast websites. Before we were writing our backend code in Ruby. Before that was Java. And we had a lot of legacy code that was sitting around. And we had this opportunity to start fresh because there was this new product called Bloomberg View. And while doing some of the research for how they wanted to build Bloomberg View, they discovered that they wanted to render the site, so render all the HTML and all that stuff on the server side. And once you got to the website, they wanted it to behave like a single page app. So no matter where you initially landed on the site, once you got there, it should have a single app experience. So at the beginning of my presentation on my slide, I said that Brisket was an isomorphic framework for building single page applications in JavaScript. And that begs the question, what is isomorphic? So isomorphic is just a fancy way of saying sharing, specifically code sharing. A traditional website is broken up between front end and the back end. Front end runs in the browser, back end runs on your servers, maybe an Amazon, Heroku, something else. And there's at least 2 code bases. So there's at least a JavaScript code base that's running in your browser. Maybe you have some single app-like features. And then you have code on the server side, which is rendering templates, also maybe communicating with your front end using AJAX calls. And they each have probably duplicated business logic. They're rendering templates the same way. There's a lot of duplicated code. So a traditional website breakdown has about, all statistics are made up, 50% on the server and 50% on the client. It's just, there's not much code sharing. Maybe there's 10% in libraries that you have, but for the most part, unless you're writing all your code in JavaScript or you're compiling it to JavaScript, it's mostly mutually exclusive. And our goal was to write our apps once. We wanted to be super agile, and we didn't want to have to share business logic. We didn't want to have to render our templates in 2 different places. We didn't want to have to rewrite our code. So we got our feet wet with writing isomorphic JavaScript by saying, all right, can we render our templates using the same code on the front end and the server? And we kind of figured it out, and then we're like, okay, can we share data models between the front end and the server? What about application logic? Why not everything? So again, why did we build Brisket? It seems like not that novel an idea. Share your code, don't duplicate your code, single responsibility principle. Surely someone else out there has an isomorphic JavaScript framework. At the time that we built it, which was maybe a year and a half ago, when we started work on Bloomberg View and the beginnings of Brisket, there really wasn't any choices. Render was about the only choice, and we chose not to go with render because of the way it coupled all of its application logic and view rendering. It was kind of a messy solution, and it didn't give us the flexibility that we were looking for. Over the past year, though, there's been a lot of things that have been coming out. If you go to isomorphic.net, is the website, I believe, it lists all these isomorphic JavaScript frameworks. Brisket is one of them, But now you have React, which is being used to build isomorphic JavaScript frameworks. Render, I guess, is still popular. There's a bunch of others which I haven't used. But we've been using Brisket, and that's obvious because it's a homegrown framework. But why I think you should be interested in Brisket is how rapid you can build applications with it. So all our new Bloomberg websites are all built on Brisket. And Brisket aims to give you code freedom while providing you all the tools to make your code agnostic to its environment. So you don't care whether your code is supposed to run in the client or the server. You just write it once and it works. Brisket is based on Backbone. Its main dependencies are Express and Backbone. And like if you're familiar with MVC, Backbone and thus Brisket is very easy to pick up. And some of the features that Brisket provides are environment agnostic model view controller and routers. It provides you Express engine. It's highly configurable, and it has graceful degradation in the browser. So if you were to say turn off JavaScript in your browser, Brisket would still work. It actually degrades to just a traditional website. When you click a link, it goes to a new route. And there's a lot of subsystems, so these are just some of them. I won't be going over all of them. But what I would like to do is do a demo Brisket app to show you what Brisket really is. Taste of Brisket. So you guys write Node.js here, right? I believe David was telling me you guys are taught the mean stack. So this is just a sample application that I wrote last night. It's on my GitHub. There's a link. Maybe we can send it around if you're interested. So I'm just running Grunt, and that's creating a Brisket server. It's doing some building for Browserify. It's compiling some templates, and then it's starting my Brisket server. To prove to you that it's on, I refresh. So I refresh, I see some logs. I see some logs on the server. So now we're cooking. So the entry point to every Brisket app is in the server. The server is what's going to be responding to your initial page request. So to create a Brisket server, it's pretty simple. You just you configure it to tell it where your API is. You tell it where your client app is living, where your server app is living to do some environment-specific code, which is always necessary. You can have environment-specific configs for your server and your client. And then you can do server-specific handling when the route is finished, or say when I go to the home page. So to prove to you that I get a client and a server for free, here is my client code, and when the client code starts, it's going to say my favorite town is blank. Actually, this is it's my favorite food, not town. So it's going to say my favorite food is brisket. It's going to say client app is started. And then on the server, it's going to say my favorite food is brisket, my favorite side is, I forget what I said, and then server app started. So you see for the server, my favorite food is brisket, my favorite server side is plate, Server app is started. And then the client, my favorite food is brisket, and we're in the client. So this is the end of where our code sharing stops. So I have client code, I have server code. It's for mostly config, but after that, all the rest of the code is shared. So what happens when I go to the home page? So if we look at the network tab, I make a request, it makes a request for the JavaScript on the page, and then I click a particular link. So let's click on the expander wrap. It makes a request for some images. That is it. So that's my favorite show, Parks and Rec. So now if I go to another route that does some AJAX calls, you're going to see that it's making an AJAX call for Walking Dead information, and that information just says The Walking Dead, and it contains a URL for the image. But it went there via AJAX. It didn't do a full page request. I could do the same for Game of Thrones. I could do the same for Shameless. Shameless does not have an image. So how does this work? I'll sit in this high chair. So Brisket allows you to set up routers. So I have a home router, so when I go to slash, it's going to handle it. And then it has a router for all my shows. So this shows shows/shameless. I have 3 shows which respond to a parameter, and then 1 specific route for Parks and Rec. So if we go to the shows router, we see that we have a route for Parks and Rec, and then all the other shows, it takes the show as a parameter, and then it creates a model, and it fetches the data for that model. So when I hit my application /shows/ Game of Thrones, it's going to create a show model with Game of Thrones, and it's going to go fetch to the API. And once it fetches the data, it's going to create a view with my new model that I fetched. So this is all that show is. Show just defines where the API is. It has a method to check whether or not it has URL data for an image, and that's it. The show view, it defines a template for the view, and it's going to conditionally create an image view if there's data for an image. And all it's going to do in the application logic is it's going to pass in the show name and display it. And we're using, in this example, I'm using Hogan, which is mustache templates. So if I go to show.html, all that has is show name, and then it has an image container, and whether or not I have an image, it's going to render into that image container. So all this code is pretty simple. And I have it on the client and the server. And to prove to you that it works on the server exclusively as well, I can disable JavaScript and refresh the page. And now when I make, now when I click links, so if I go to Parks and Recreation, it does a full page refresh. So it just degraded to a traditional website. Brisket also has view handling, so if we go to a page that doesn't exist, I get a 404, and that's just handled by the routers. So in my application router and the router brewery, which kind of combines all of the routers together, I say that when there's a page not found, which is defined by star undefined, it's handled by that particular view. Yeah, that's it for the presentation. For the demo, rather, we can come back to that. So again, how does this work from an application perspective? So on the first route, it goes to Express. So you have a particular route, let's say it's the home page or one of the shows page. It goes to the Express engine. It finds the right place to render whatever your route is. It then creates a backbone view on the server, it renders it, creates your HTML for the view, plus the layout of the page, and then it sends back your response. Something I didn't mention in my demo was that you can define layouts for the page. So let's say that your page has a header and footer that's the same, sorry, your website has a header and footer that's the same for every page. You can define that in the layout, and then as you click different links on the site, what Brisket does transparent for you is that it just swaps out whatever's the content of the page and inserts the new view for the route that you followed. So once I've done the first request, I'm now in single page land. So once I'm in the single page app mode, I click another link and it's going to make an AJAX call. And it's going to do the routing on the front end and find where I need to hit to get my data back. And it's going to hit that API, get the data back as JSON, render it, and then update the content and the layout. So here's a link, github.com/Bloomberg/Brisket. You can also npm install Brisket. I have a link to the GitHub for my demo. Now I'll leave it up to you guys for questions you might have.